All right, so get this. Today we're taking a deep dive into something a little different, even maybe a little, apocalyptic. Yeah, a listener sent in this YouTube video, and it's all about, well, the book of Revelation. But get this, it tries to connect what Revelation says with modern technology, like really draw some parallels. And I gotta admit, I'm kind of curious to see where this goes.
Well, it certainly speaks to, our need to find meaning, especially when things feel out of control.
Yeah.
And when has that not been the case?
Exactly. So it's like looking at these old texts through today's lens, right, to see if they have any warnings or insights for us now.
Right.
So the video jumps right in with this image of smoke like a furnace, one of the most vivid plights of Revelation.
Yeah, and it connects that phrase, that imagery, to two specific events. First, you see it back in Genesis with Sodom and Gomorrah being destroyed.
Right.
And then, boom, it pops up again in Revelation, billowing out from the abyss.
Okay. And the video, well, it just comes right out and says it. This thick smoke, this choking smoke, maybe that's actually describing a nuclear explosion. Even pointing out that, both the biblical descriptions and what a mushroom cloud looks like, they both kind of give you that feeling of just overwhelming destruction, the kind you can't escape.
Yeah, it's a pretty striking parallel visually, but it also makes you wonder, right? Is it just coincidence? Or is there something deeper going on here?
Yeah.
For centuries, fire has symbolized divine judgment across so many cultures. So maybe the fear we have of nuclear weapons, it's tapping into this primal fear of just being wiped out, completely annihilated, a fear that's been with us forever.
Wow, that's a really good point. And I mean, the people who wrote Revelation, they obviously didn't know about nukes, but they definitely understood destruction. And how that could make people afraid.
Exactly. And, we have to remember the context, right? Revelation was written when early Christians were being persecuted under Roman rule. So their anxieties about the end of the world, those were very real. And that shaped how they used these symbolic language.
Yeah, so maybe the video is onto something. Maybe the language of Revelation still speaks to us because, well, it speaks to those fears, those anxieties that are kind of timeless. They go beyond just technology or a certain period in history.
Yeah, that's one way to look at it.
Yeah.
And it does make you think, how we understand warfare today, with all its potential for global destruction, how does that affect how we read these ancient texts?
Okay, so we've got apocalyptic smoke, maybe connected to that primal fear of just being wiped out.
Right.
But the video doesn't stop there. It moves on to another, terrifying creature from Revelation. The locusts.
Ah, yes.
Yeah.
And not your average backyard kind either. I mean, Revelation describes them as having faces like men, hair like women, teeth like lions, even crowns of gold. It even says that. And the sound they make, it's like many chariots running into battle.
Yeah, it's a really strange and disturbing image. But the video proposes a modern equivalent, and it's pretty chilling. Military helicopters.
Interesting.
Yeah, the video points out the visual similarities, the incredibly loud noise, and the fact that they can just, appear from above and attack.
Makes you think, doesn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, imagine describing a helicopter to someone living 2,000 years ago.
Right.
They'd probably end up using imagery that, sounds monstrous and completely otherworldly to them.
Totally. And it makes me wonder, how much do our own experiences influence how we understand these texts, right? We see helicopters in Revelation because we know what they are. We know that feeling of fear they can create. It's like our modern world is giving us a framework for how to interpret these ancient visions.
I think that's a really key point. Our interpretations, they're always colored by our own time and place. But that doesn't mean they're wrong. It just means we got to be aware of that lens we're using.
All right, so we've got potentially, nuclear smoke and maybe helicopter locusts. What other modern parallels does this video find?
Well, it goes on to some other really interesting descriptions, but the one that really sticks out is the image of Babylon the Great from Revelation 17 and 18.
Oh, okay. Remind me, what's the deal with Babylon in Revelation? I always get it mixed up with that Tower of Babel story.
Right, yeah, that's a common mix-up. The Tower of Babel, that's from Genesis. It's about human ambition and how languages came about. But Babylon in Revelation, that's a whole different thing. It's portrayed as this city just overflowing with wealth and luxury, but also incredibly corrupt. It's like a symbol of worldly power and materialism gone wrong.
Okay. So how does this video connect Babylon to our world today with all the technology and everything?
Well, it argues that, how Babylon is described as this global center for trade, a hub of advanced technology,
Right.
at a place where people are just seduced by all the wealth and power.
Yeah.
Maybe that reflects our own globalized society. It might not be a literal city anymore, but it could be a metaphor for the downsides of unchecked progress and consumerism.
So instead of thinking about Babylon as a specific place, we should think of it as like a mindset, a way of life where people value possessions and success more than anything else.
Exactly. And it's important to note that the video doesn't, completely demonize technology or wealth. It recognizes that they can be good. It can make our lives better in many ways.
Right. But it's also like a warning, right? It's saying, hey, don't become slaves to your own creations. Don't lose sight of what really matters just because you're chasing after more stuff and more power.
Exactly. The video encourages us to see these apocalyptic images, not as like predictions of a fixed future, but as warnings about what could happen depending on the choices we make. It's like technology is a tool. And like any tool, it can be used for good, or it can be used for, well, not so good.
Okay, so what does this all mean for us, the people listening? What should we take away from this whole deep dive into apocalyptic technology?
That's the big question, isn't it? I think the most important thing to remember is we have to be mindful of our relationship with technology. It's easy to become, just passive consumers. We let technology control how we live without even thinking about it.
Right. The video wants us to be more critical, to look at our own habits and ask ourselves, is technology helping me or am I just serving it?
Exactly. And I think that's where these old texts, they can really help us. They can make us see our world differently, to notice things, patterns that we might otherwise miss. It's like they're holding a mirror up to us, showing us our hopes and our fears, what we want and what we're afraid of.
I really like that. It's like Revelation is inviting us to have this conversation with history, to learn from the wisdom and the warnings of people who lived long ago.
Yeah, and that's especially important now with all the changes happening in the world, all the challenges and opportunities.
Speaking of challenges, the video tackles some of the most controversial and mysterious parts of Revelation. In fact, it goes on to explore one of the most debated symbols ever, the mark of the beast. And this is where things get even more interesting. The video suggests that this ancient symbol, well, it might have some parallels in our world of technology that are, well, a little unsettling.
Oh.
Yeah. I have to admit, I'm a little nervous now. The mark of the beast, that's always been this mysterious and kind of scary thing. So what does the video say about it?
Well, it starts by, reminding us of that passage in Revelation 13.1618, the one that describes the mark as a symbol of loyalty to the beast, something you need to buy or sell, and, something that's placed on your hand or forehead.
Yeah, that passage has always given me chills. But how does that connect to technology?
Well, the video explores this idea that the mark of the beast could be some kind of advanced technology, something that can track and control people. It points to things like microchip implants, biometric ID systems, and digital currencies as like early versions of this kind of control.
It makes me think about all the information that's already being tracked about us, through our phones, social media, all our online activity. It's almost like we're choosing to be watched all the time in a way that people wouldn't have even imagined just a few decades ago.
And that's exactly what the video is getting at. It's not saying that any of those specific technologies, I asked the mark of the beast, but they do represent this growing trend towards more surveillance and control, this blurring of the line between, our online lives and our offline lives.
So it's less about a literal mark and more about the idea of using technology to take away freedom and force everyone to be the same.
Exactly. The video uses the image of the mark of the beast to raise questions about the dangers of letting technology advance without any limits and how privacy is being eroded in a world that's, well, hyper-connected.
Wow. This is definitely giving me a lot to think about. But I gotta be honest, some of this is starting to feel a little, I don't know, conspiratorial. Like, is the video saying that we're headed towards some dystopian future where everything we do is being tracked and controlled?
Well, I understand your skepticism. And it's important to, approach these kinds of interpretations with a critical mind and be careful of just giving in to fear. This video is just presenting one perspective, and it's up to each person to decide how much they believe it.
Okay, so it's not about just blindly accepting everything the video says, but using it as a starting point to think for ourselves and make our own decisions, to consider what could happen with all these technological trends and decide what kind of future we want to create.
Exactly. I think the real value of this deep dive is that it makes us think critically about the role of technology in our lives and consider the consequences of our choices, both as individuals and as a society. It's call to be aware, to be involved, and to actively shape a future that reflects our values.
I love that. That's really well said. And on that note, I think it's time for us to take a break and just think about everything we've uncovered so far. This deep dive has been full of thought-provoking connections and some unsettling questions, and I have a feeling it's going to get even more intense.
Yeah, you're right. We've only just scratched the surface of this complex and fascinating topic. But before we go any deeper, we want to hear from you, the listener. What are your thoughts on these connections between Revelation and modern technology? Are you finding them intriguing, unsettling, or maybe a bit of both?
We're all in this together, so share your insights, your questions, any concerns you have. Let's unpack this together and see where this deep dive takes us next. All right, we're back. And still diving deep into this really fascinating and kind of unsettling, exploration of Revelation and how it might connect to our modern world.
Yeah, what really strikes me is that this video isn't just presenting these parallels as like fun little coincidences. It's really using them to make us think about some big questions about technology, like what's its role in our lives and how it can be used for good, but also, what are the potential dangers?
That's a great point. It's not just about saying like, oh, hey, look, tanks were predicted in the Bible. It's about, making us really think about how we use all this power we have with technology and what could happen if we're not careful.
Exactly. And
yeah.
I think that conversation is super important now, more than ever. Technology is changing so fast. It's easy to just get caught up in the excitement of all the new gadgets and stuff without stopping to think about like the long-term effects.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so let's get back to Revelation. Where does the video go next with these modern parallels?
Well, it dives into a few other interesting descriptions, but one that really stands out is this image of Babylon the Great.
Yeah.
From Revelation chapters 17 and 18.
Okay. Remind me, what's the significance of Babylon in Revelation? I always get it mixed up with that whole Tower of Babel story.
Right. Yeah. A lot of people do. The Tower of Babel, that's from Genesis. It's about human ambition and the origins of different languages. But Babylon in Revelation, it's something completely different. It's depicted as this city, incredibly wealthy, luxurious, but also super corrupt, like a symbol of worldly power and materialism just gone wild.
Oh, right. So how does the video connect this image of Babylon to our modern world, with all the technology and everything?
It argues that, how Babylon is described as this global center of trade, a hub for advanced technology, and a place where people are just obsessed with wealth and power. Maybe that's like a reflection of our own globalized society. It might not be a literal city anymore, but it could be like a metaphor for the potential problems with too much progress and consumerism, when they're not kept in check.
So instead of thinking of Babylon as an actual place, we should think of it as like a way of thinking, a way of life where material possessions and worldly success are the most important things.
Exactly. And it's important to note that the video doesn't say that technology or wealth are bad in themselves. It acknowledges that they can be used for good, that they can make our lives better.
Right, of course.
But it's also a cautionary tale. It's warning us not to become, slaves to our own creations. Don't lose sight of what really matters, just to chase after more stuff and more power.
Yeah, that's a really good point.
The video is encouraging us to see these apocalyptic images, not as like set in stone predictions of the future, but as warnings about what could happen if we make the wrong choices. It's a reminder that technology is a tool, and like any tool, it can be used for good or for bad.
So what does all of this mean for us, for the people listening? What are we supposed to take away from this whole exploration of apocalyptic technology?
That's the $1 million question, isn't it? I think the most important thing to remember is that, we need to be, aware of how we relate to technology. It's so easy to just become passive consumers, to let technology kind of run our lives without really questioning it.
Yeah, that's true. The video wants us to be more critical, to look at our own habits and ask ourselves, is this technology really helping me, or am I just letting it control me?
Exactly. And I think that's where, these ancient texts, they can actually be really helpful. They can help us to see our own world in a new way, to notice patterns and things that we might otherwise miss. It's like they're holding up a mirror to us, reflecting back our hopes and fears, our desires and anxieties.
That's a really powerful image. It's like Revelation is inviting us to have a conversation with history, to learn from the wisdom and the warnings of people who came before us.
And that's especially relevant today, I think, with all the challenges and opportunities that come with a rapidly changing world.
Speaking of challenges, this video doesn't shy away from tackling some of the most controversial and mysterious parts of Revelation. In fact, it goes on to explore one of the most debated symbols of all time, the mark of the beast. And this is where things take an even more, intriguing turn. The video suggests that this ancient symbol, it might actually have some parallels in our modern world of technology that are, a little unsettling.
Okay, I gotta admit, I'm a little nervous now. The mark of the beast has always been one of those, mysterious and kind of terrifying parts of Revelation. So what exactly does the video say about it?
Well, it starts by reminding us of that passage in Revelation 13.1618, the one that describes the mark as the symbol of allegiance to the beast, something you need to buy or sell, and something that's placed on your hand or forehead.
Right. Yeah, that passage has always given me chills.
Yeah.
But how does that relate to technology? The video explores this idea that the mark of the beast could be some form of really advanced technology, something that allows for really seamless tracking and control of individuals. It points to emerging technologies like microchip implants, biometric identification systems, and digital currencies as possible precursors to this kind of control.
It definitely makes me think about how much of our personal information is already being tracked and monitored through our smartphones, social media, all our online activity. It's almost as if we're kind of voluntarily submitting to a level of surveillance that would have been unimaginable just a few decades ago.
And that's exactly the point the video is trying to make. It's not necessarily saying that any of these specific technologies is the mark of the beast, but it's saying that they represent this growing trend toward increased surveillance and control. This blurring of the lines between our online and offline lives.
Yeah. So it's less about a literal mark and more about this underlying idea of using technology to limit freedom and force people to conform.
Exactly. The video is using the imagery of the mark of the beast to raise questions about, the dangers of unchecked technological advancement and the erosion of privacy in a world that's, so hyper-connected.
Okay, this is definitely giving me a lot to think about. But I gotta say, some of this is starting to feel a little conspiratorial. Is the video saying that we're like on the verge of some kind of dystopian future where everything we do is tracked and controlled?
Well, I understand your skepticism. It's important to approach these kinds of interpretations with a healthy dose of critical thinking and to be wary of falling into fear-mongering. This video is just presenting one perspective, and it's up to each individual to decide how much weight they give to its claims.
So it's not about just blindly accepting everything the video says, but using it as a starting point for our own reflection and to make our own judgments, to consider the potential implications of all these technological trends and to decide for ourselves what kind of future we want to create.
Exactly. I think the real value of this whole deep dive is that it makes us think critically about technology and its role in our lives.
Yeah.
And to consider the consequences of our choices, both as individuals and as a society. It's a call to be aware, to be engaged, and to really be proactive in shaping a future that aligns with our values.
Well said. And on that note, I think it's time to just pause for a moment and think about everything we've talked about so far. This deep dive has been full of really thought-provoking connections and some unsettling questions, and I have a feeling it's about to get even more intense.
You're right. We've only just scratched the surface of this complex and fascinating topic. But before we delve any further, we want to hear from you, the listener. What are your thoughts on these connections between Revelation and modern technology? Are you finding them intriguing, unsettling? or maybe a bit of both.
We're all on this journey together. So share your insights, your questions, your concerns. Let's unpack this together and see where this deep dive takes us next. All right, so we're back, and well, I guess it's time to face the big one, right? The beast in the book, as they say, the mark of the beast. You know, it's one of those topics that people have debated forever, come up with all sorts of interpretations. But this video, it brings a whole new perspective, and it's hard to just ignore it.
Yeah, what's really interesting about how the video approaches it, it doesn't get stuck on trying to find one, like single exact meaning for the mark. Instead, it uses this ancient symbol as a way to look at how much we depend on technology now, and how, that dependency could be used to limit our freedom, to make us all the same.
Right. I mean, if we're being honest, the idea of some physical mark that you need to buy and sell stuff, that sounds a little crazy in our world of, credit cards and phones and everything. But the video's point is the real thing to pay attention to is that idea of control, of keeping people out.
Exactly. It reminds us that, Revelation, it's all about symbolic language. It's trying to get across these deeper truths about being human. So instead of getting caught up in the literal meaning, the video is asking us to think, how could this idea of the mark, how could that show up in our world today? Maybe in ways that are, more subtle, harder to see.
So it's more about how technology could be used to control people rather than, some actual microchip implant or something.
Exactly. The video points to things like those social credit systems you hear about, data profiling, how much we rely on digital platforms for, basic services. It sees those as possible ways that control could happen. It's not necessarily about one big system that controls everything, but more like, how individual freedom gets chipped away little by little through all these different technologies that are all connected.
I see what you mean. It's like we're becoming more and more reliant on all these systems without really thinking about what it could mean for our privacy, our freedom to make our own choices. We're so used to things being easy and convenient that we might be giving up something much more important.
That's a really good point. The video seems to be saying that the real danger isn't some, obvious dictator taking over. It's about us, willingly giving up our freedom for comfort, for security. And that kind of control, it can happen so slowly that we don't even notice it until it's too late.
Okay, yeah, I'm starting to get the bigger picture here. It's not about, predicting the future or saying that this or that gadget is the mark of the beast. It's about, being aware that technology can be used to take away our freedom, to make us all think and act the same way. And then, once we're aware, we can start doing something to protect those values, those freedoms.
Exactly. The video isn't trying to make people scared or paranoid. It's trying to help us become, critical thinkers, citizens who are engaged in this world where technology is changing everything so fast. It's a reminder that, we have a say in how the future turns out, both individually and as a society.
That's a powerful message. And it brings us back to something we've been talking about this whole time, how important it is to see things from different perspectives.
Right. The video has shown us that, looking at these old texts with our modern understanding, it can give us some surprising insights, make us question what we thought we knew. It's encouraged us to think critically about technology and what it means for our lives, for our values, for the future.
It's also reminded us that, how we interpret things, that's always personal. We all have our own experiences, our beliefs, our worries, and we bring all that to the table when we're, try to understand these texts. And that's okay. The important thing is to be open to different ways of seeing things and to, really talk about the questions they raise.
Very well said. This has been a really fascinating look at how these ancient prophecies connect with our anxieties today. It's made us think hard, question what we take for granted, and consider what our choices mean in a world that's changing so fast. And, it may not have given us all the answers, but it's definitely given us a lot to think about.
It really has. We started with smoke and locusts, went deep into Babylon, faced the whole mystery of the mark of the beast. It's been a wild journey through Revelation and all its apocalyptic imagery, and I hope it's been as thought-provoking for you as it has been for us.
And remember, this is just the beginning. The book of Revelation, it keeps drawing us in, making us think about our world and our place in it.
So we encourage you to, keep exploring these ideas, hear different viewpoints, and keep asking those tough questions, because in the end, the future isn't set in stone. It's being shaped by the choices we're making right now. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the world of Revelation and how it might connect to our modern world.